So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to yet another webinar by the International Council for Circular Economy, where the brightest ideas are shared to drive entrepreneurs as well as businesses forward. ICC is also a forum of some supremely talented people from an eclectic range of sectors with a common vision of going towards a society where sustainable development is the order of the day. Ubiquitous enough, what we stand for has to be what we stand on. So before we begin this webinar, I would like to extend my warm wishes on behalf of the International Council for Circular Economy. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming all of you to this webinar on extending product lifespan through refurbish and remanufacture. So this is the second part of our two sessions on extending product lifespan. In case you missed the first part, you're most welcome to check it out on our YouTube channel, which is International Council for Circular Economy. So the video is there and you can watch the entire webinar, the previous webinar over there. So ICC is the largest international network for professionals, corporates, and organizations working in circular economy in India. ICC operates in three strong pillars: educate, innovate, and inspire to establish strong connections amongst the circular economy community. It shares best practices to have an impact at a local and global level simultaneously. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our speakers for today's webinar. So we have Dr. Sameer Joshi with us. Dr. Sameer has expertise in plastic engineering and he is a member Institute of Engineers, fellow of Indian Plastics Institute, fellow Institute of Valuers, along with holding a PhD in waste management. He has been working in plastics-based management and in supporting young entrepreneurs who are dedicated to reduce plastic pollution. His work is in circular economy, recycling, EPR in plastics, plastic injection molding. He's an approved valuer for plant and machinery and honorary secretary governing council of Indian Plastics Institute. Along with multiple feats, he has a Guinness World Book record holder for the world's largest t-shirt from plastic waste in 2018. He is signatory in Global Commitment to End Plastic Waste, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and a mentor International Council for Circular Economy. We have Keith also with us. So Keith is an experienced chairperson with a demonstrated history of working in the information technology and services industry. Currently, Keith sits on the board of numerous companies. He is past president of the Information Technology Association of Africa and is currently chairman of the EWaste Association of South Africa, which is also known as EWaste, which he founded in 2006. He has also chaired various REMCO committees and finance and investment committees. Keith has also served on the board of the ISCTT SETA for 4 years. Keith has just been appointed to serve on the EWaste Advisory Board of the Warg University of Technology. Keith is a sought after public speaker and presents papers frequently, both locally as well as internationally on e-waste management. Then we have Vikisa Zablon with us. So Vikisa is a regional coordinator for the African Circular Economy Network and organizer for CEC Nairobi chapter and founded the UON Bike Share program. He holds a Bachelor's of Arts and Design degree from University of Nairobi in 2011. Vikisa is a designer in everything he does. He sees potential all around him. His strength lies in his broad knowledge on the circular economy, his never ending perseverance, and his enthusiasm, which is contagious. Wikisa has a clear view on how his ideal society would look like, and he doesn't hesitate to act on it. With his enthusiasm, he involves all kinds of people to realize the promises that lie unexploited. Wikisa is driven by a heart full of love for his country and all the living creatures that it holds. Then we have our moderator come speaker, Ms. Shalini Goel Bhalla, a postgraduate environmentalist. Shalini is a climate change visionary. She's been actively working in sustainability and developed a zero waste program which helps entities to reduce their carbon footprint. Her project Zero made headlines when it was awarded by the Uttarakhand state government. An active social worker, she has several awards that add to her laurels. She has been recognized and awarded by Social Founder London, Global Goodwill Ambassador, the US, ICUNR India. Currently working as an advisor in sustainability and circular economy, she is chairing the International Council for Circular Economy. An active speaker, she takes up initiatives in promoting educational opportunities, leadership development, entrepreneurship, and empowerment of youth and women. She's associated with MSME as Influencer 2019 in the circular economy sector and with Delhi government on their entrepreneurship mindset program. She's mentored to 7 women-led enterprises. Her first book happens to be the first book on circular economy in India. So before I hand over the mic to Shalini, I would like to bring your focus on the topic of the webinar. The present model of consumption is to dispose and immediately replace the used or damaged items. However, recycling plastic is increasingly becoming a critical part of the solution. Recycling plastics have become increasingly available in various formats, including
Plastics have been the focus of discussion all around the world. From marine plastics to single use plastics, the concern is to reduce the litter and recycle most of it. We can see solutions like the apparel and footwear designs being promoted by a lot of big brands. Samir, my first question is to you. You have been working on plastics. What are the viable and environmental friendly alternates and circular strategies for extending the life cycle of plastics?
Thank you, Shalini ji, for having me. Thank you, Susanna, for the kind introduction, and a very good afternoon to you all. It's my pleasure to be here and share some of my thoughts. Now, thanks to the improved separate collection and investments in the innovation skills and capacity upscaling, the export of poorly sorted plastic waste has been phased out, and recycled plastics have become increasingly valuable feedstocks for industries both in India and overseas. The plastics value chain is far more integrated, and the chemical industry works together with the plastics recycler to help them find wider and high value applications for their output. Substances hampering recycling processes have slowly been replaced or are being phased out. The market for the recycled and the innovative plastics is successfully established with clear growth perspectives as more products incorporate some recycled content. The demand for the recycled plastic content is growing and providing a stable flow of revenues for the recycling sector and job security for the growing workforce. More plastic recycling helps reduce the European dependence on imported fossil fuel and cuts the CO2 emission in line with the commitments made under the Paris Agreement. Innovative materials and alternate food stocks for plastic production are being developed and used where evidence clearly shows that they are more sustainable and com- as compared to the non-renewable alternatives. This support efforts on decarbonization and creating additional opportunities for growth. Better product design makes plastic easier. This is a very strong belief and a happening thing according to the Alan MacArthur Foundation, and saving around 77 to 120 euros for each ton of plastic waste collected by just making the better product design. Establishing a clearly regular network and framework for plastics with biodegradable pro- properties and innovation is an enable for the transformation of the plastics value chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sameer. That has been a lot of information that you have actually talked about, along with the kind of steps that are being taken currently. Tell me, Samir, another challenging topic being discussed today is recycling techniques in plastics. And we do hear a lot of techniques that are coming in. The two most important techniques are the mechanical and the chemical recycling of PET bottles. And my question to you is, we are not yet very sure as to how the chemical recycling and what is the effect of chemical recycling on the environment. So my question is, how do we compare these two recycling methodologies in terms of the environmental impact?
Overall, the life cycle assessment studies conclude that mechanical recycling of waste plastics has a lower environmental impact than the other disposal options. Little is known, unfortunately, of chemical technologies, toxic air emissions, the liquid effluents, or the solid waste streams, but they are probably comparable to other petrochemical facilities. A particular concern is the fate of contaminants and additives, including the toxic materials in the plastic and their post-processing management. These questions will need to be impartially studied under the real-world operating conditions. This chemical recycling, why I say all this is because chemical recycling is fairly new. Chemical recycling splits the polymer change and supplies products such as crude oil, naphtha, or fuels. Mechanical recycling preserves the molecular structure. It mechanically crushes the plastics and remits it into the granulate format. The granulate is then used to make newer plastic products. Currently, companies are promoting chemical recycling more strongly, although it requires a lot of energy and does not save much carbon dioxide. Using chemical recycling to produce fuel from plastic waste is well known. If these fuels are subsequently burned, more carbon dioxide is likely to be blown into the atmosphere. Chemical recycling being popular due to not much known because of the mechanical and has also cost effective. Mechanical recycling also requires the plastics to be actually recycled and upscaled. This, for example, can be done with dyes and additives which can be made in used in recycled plastic. Product design also plays a major role in mechanical recycling. To give you an example, a cheese package consists of 7 layers of film. It is not possible to recycle it. The effort involved is much greater than of producing everything from the scratch. Another challenge is the color of recycled plastics. When plastic waste is shredded and remitted into granulate, the resultant product is black gray. Plastic product with brilliant colors cannot be produced out of it. So in addition, these granules made from recycled plastics often have an unpleasant smell. This smell can be transferred to the product. However, funding for the chemical recycling is currently much higher for mechanical recycling. And in the long run, we hope that chemical recycling will catch up and give better property and good quality recycled materials.
Thank you, Sabir. Again, I think this is still a question, and I think what we want to understand is, or maybe in future, a little bit of research in finding out if chemical recycling doesn't have or has comparatively lower impact on the environment is something that we need to study. And I'm not sure if there is any international study that has been done on it. Maybe I would like to know more about that also. But yes, as you rightly said, both have their own impacts and kind of negatives which we need to rule out to recycle the plastics as much as possible. We have seen a lot of designs coming in, like we said, in the footwear, in the apparel. But again, how much is the life? How does it really help the environment? Or is it a kind of an environmental friendly alternate to use plastics is still in question. And I think I would be looking forward to Vukisa's answers when we come to circular design and get more insights onto this. Keith, you demonstrate history of working in information technology and service industry. You know how industrialization and commercialization resulted in building in of the obsolescence in the products. Now, when we talk about obsolescence, it becomes a really, really kind of a controversial topic. But I would like to throw this question to you. What role, according to your experience, does obsolescence play in making a product redundant?
Thank you, Shalini. Firstly, I also welcome to everybody and to my fellow panelists. It's great to be in such illustrious company, and hopefully I can hold my own. But I look forward to the debate. And thank you for the question. It's a very valid question. I think particularly in today's day and age, where we coming to the end of the fourth industrial revolution and moving towards the fifth industrial revolution. Everybody knows, I think it's common cause that over the past 100+ years, electrical and electronic products have been making a significant contribution to the world's economies, both socially and economically. But like everything in life, they say for every action, there's a reaction. And the flip side to having all these wonderful technology available to us is the severity of impact that these products have on the environment is directly related to their production, their use, their disposal, and end of life. And there's also a direct correlation between consumption patterns and life cycles of these products. It is common cause that the recycling of e-waste is a resource-intensive business, which results in environmental, social, and climate impacts. And ultimately, the bigger picture here is circular economy. And I put it to the panel and also for discussion that in developing countries where there is such high levels of poverty, particularly as we experience here in South Africa and in Africa, that the communities in themselves have been adopting circular economy for a long time out of necessity. So what do I mean by that? So if you take somebody living in a rural village, they will take packaging material and use it for heating or for flooring or for a whole lot of other uses. So in itself, that is circular economy. It doesn't have to, circular economy is not necessarily a sophisticated system. It can be a very, very basic system. But redundancy is a big issue, and I do have empathy for the developers, and certainly, Wikisa, we look forward to your expert comment on this. But it is a problem for us, because if you just take an example of electric vehicles, I mean, electric vehicles, the projected growth rate is astronomical going forward. But what is the impact that it has on the world, both environmentally, socially, and technologically, to extract the metals, all the materials to make this electric vehicle? That's the first question. What is the carbon footprint of each electric vehicle? And then coupled to that is, when those electric vehicles become end of life, the lithium-ion batteries and such like, what does it cost to refurbish, repurpose, reuse, or recycle those components? And if you add those two things together as one total carbon footprint, it maybe doesn't always paint the rosy picture that we think that it is. So we have to find better ways and means to treat products at end of life. And that's where the OEMs and the designers, like Wikisa, can tell us that it's absolutely key to make sure, without giving away any of their trade secrets, to make it easier for us to be able to work with those products at end of life.
Yes, Keith, I think it is very important when you said that. Only today I was reading an article in the newspaper, and the Indian government, particularly in Delhi, they are actually enforcing, not enforcing, I mean, they're trying to get more and more electric vehicles. Government is giving a lot of subsidies on two-wheelers and four-wheelers. But again, I mean, like you rightly said, what is the end of life practice will determine whether these uh, electronic vehicles even are kind of a sustainable or green solution to the fossil fuel alternates. It's really important because, and the next part that you mentioned right in the beginning, that all the developing nations, uh, including India for that sake, Africa, have their own ways of recycling a lot of things and using them in multiple ways. I still see in India, there was a practice of making paper bags out of newspaper, and that practice has never died. So it's not new for us to use a paper bag. Paper bags were always there, used uh, out of the newspaper and kind of recycled every time we could think of it. So, yes, I think we have a lot of uh, alternates here and circular economy alternates in very simple way, which may not have the tag of being circular, or we may not call them circular alternates, as these people would not know it. But extending the product life has been always in our kind of DNA, and we have been doing that uh, for a very long time. That brings me to the next point, Keith. With the consumer electronic space, many brands have been making it more difficult for us to repair the products and even sell them secondhand. How a change can be brought to alleviate these kind of situations?
Yes, once again, so that's really good question, and in my travels over the last few years, these questions, which are so pertinent, I think I often say to myself, if you had a group of made up only of academics, and if you had a group only made up of entrepreneurs, and if you had a group only made up of consumers, and if you had a group only made up of product designers, and you put the same question to each one of those groups independent of each other, I think you're going to get 4 different answers. And I think therein lies the challenge that we have. So there is no straightforward single answer to this problem. But the real concern is the rate at which e-waste is growing because of the consumption. People are adopting the technology and the end of life issues. And I do have empathy for the big brands, having been a director and shareholder of the largest privately owned IT distribution company in Africa. So if you're one of the top brands like an HP or a Dell or whatever the case may be, you don't want your product, once it's a consumer is using it and they've stopped using it, they give it to somebody else and they open it up and they make a whole lot of changes in that product, but the branding still stays behind the product. If something then happens to the product, it comes back against the OEM. And that is a challenge, and it's unfair. So I have empathy for that. But I think we all have to put up our big boy pants on, and we have to say to ourselves, that's going to happen. That's realities of life. The product is going to move down the value chain from first user to second user to third user. So how can we ensure that the products that we put into those products make them more and more environmentally safe, that the products that go into them can be made more easily available into repurposing, reuse, recycling as secondary raw materials, because the significant lesser impact it has onto the environment by mining virgin materials as opposed to using secondary raw materials. So that's quite important. And then from the other point of view is from a design point of view, make it easy for people to dismantle so they can either repurpose, refurbish, or recycle. So those are things that are not necessarily proprietary, but have a significant benefit in a circular economy environment and to the end user. And if the OEMs were, excuse me, were more proactive in that space, it would be beneficial for their own product, but also for the environment and society as well.
Yeah, I think I agree, and it is really important, Keith, what you said. Uh, this is one thing that perhaps the companies need to imbibe into their culture, and would help everyone. I think dismantling and refurbishing, if these two things are done easily, I think will help a lot of spare parts, if not the entire product, but the components to be recycled. And that is very interesting. And I have been discussing with Vikisa last week about how he has been designing certain circular designs, and that elates me because uh, Vikesa, you are, we welcome you, welcome a circular designer on our panel for the first time, and we really look forward to your inputs today. Wikisa Circular Design Nairobi has been helping communities to maximize resources by cutting out waste through designing. Your services range from an educational to a consultant level. What are the major challenges that you have come across while reutilizing and managing waste? I'm sure you have had your experiences where there were several challenges. So we want you to talk about those challenges today.
Well, Shalini, it's such a delight to be here. And I'm really excited because with what Dr. Joshi and Kit have said, it kind of just builds up on what the scenario is here. And indeed in Africa, the context that we are operating with right now is best quoted in a research document that was done. It's called Making Do. So they speak about our context here and how we design, and it's improvisation. So we depend a lot on modularity of products and repurposing of certain things, because we, at some point, we are on the receiving end where we get a lot of products dumped here. Most of the multinationals don't manufacture here, but we depend a lot on refurbishing. So just working with the community as a community design and circular, looking at the circular design process, the challenges that we're facing with this product is, first of all, just community buying, because where we get this, as incomes improve, and there is, the exposure to brand brand recognition, and product exposure, we get to learn a lot about products. I feel at some point that the community, the behavior is not trickling down. So consumption, there are people who are doing repairs, yes, but that's on the lower end, but when now these people have money to just buy new products, for instance, where I live, we consume a lot of salt water. So we boil a lot, we use electric kettles a lot, and showers. And most of those showers are repairable. But when these showers and kettles break down, most households that have the capacity to buy them won't really bother to clean them up or replace the element. They just put them aside, and buy new ones. Now, at that process, we as designers have a role to play, because I feel in terms of consumer awareness, we haven't pushed enough education out there. And, as a designer sitting in a major brand somewhere, okay, that will work for me in terms of numbers, yes. But in terms of the environment, hurting the environment, because there are a lot of products that are out there that don't need to be out there, or those are materials that are super useful, and just helping our consumer save money. Maybe it's not a goal, but consciously it might be a goal. Yeah. Then there's the consistency in the quality of waste. We have a lot of micro aggregators that work in our ecosystem. So the products exchange a lot of hands, and at the time when the product reaches the designated user, it might be contaminated. So we face a lot of challenges around there in terms of use. We don't source product or waste in households, and that's where we lose the game, because in terms of product quality, let me just say paper. We have a lot of paper, but we don't have a channel that collects that paper. So by the time the paper reaches a certain process, or it switches from waste pickers, then it's taken to the landfill, then it's sorted from the landfill.
It gets wasted, spoiled.
It's the quality has declined. Then another problem is also investment and financing. 60% of the waste here is organic waste, and we don't have people interested in organic waste that much. So, and even when you look at the repair ecosystem, for instance, we have vocational colleges, but we are not interested in investing in that. There isn't the kind of expertise there is very low. The technology, you look at the amount of technology that has grown, the way the technology curve is growing, and the way the skills gap is moving. The people in those vocational training colleges are not necessarily well resourced to service the products that are on the market. So that's where redundancy is created. In terms of there was even a fear adopting electrical vehicles to that degree, because we feel that the mechanics on the market right now don't have sufficient skills to maintain those vehicles in terms of technology. So it becomes a barrier even to access at some point. And this is where a lot of products, again, are going to waste, because we have these high-tech products, smart products in our households. Most of the components that break down won't cost that much. They're mostly maybe capacitors or something that break down. These are components that will cost you maybe $10 to $15 or $30 to buy and replace. But we don't have those repair ecosystems already existing. So as a designer and as a community designer, there are very many levels of design that I feel that needs to be serviced. For instance, just communication. How do we communicate this information out there? How do we design this community of repair, like repair cafes? How do we resource them? On a product level, how do we now, as designers sitting in these major brands, how do we now sit down and agree on how we benefit, profit, cost, and proprietary information? How do we make products that are modular, but at the same time not lose out on trade secrets? So there's so many things that within the design discipline we're looking at, and we're also building capacity towards that.
I think, Vikisa, you brought up three most important points. One is when you said the behavioral change, it has to trickle down. I think this is something which is, I would call it a global problem, because I have worked also intercontinental, and I've seen this problem is everywhere. The behavioral change is the most difficult change. I started working 2 years back with school students and college students, and I found that particular community to be the most acceptable and kind of ready to change themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The more you go higher, it becomes more and more difficult to bring that behavioral change. The second point that you mentioned about the skill training, the gaps in skill training, when we talk about EV electronic vehicles, I think you are again right, because I think with the government pushing renewable energy, also the electronic vehicles, it becomes equally important to also bridge the gap of repairing these solutions if they were to be repaired. And I think EWaste plays an important role when it comes to kind of capacity building of such things and
Mm-hmm.
skilling. So yeah, these alternatives are really really important when we come to that. These are important points that needs to be taken care of. And yes, again, coming to it, the industry needs to also design things in such a manner that perhaps it becomes easier to refurbish and repurpose the recycle the products. Vikisa, for last past couple of years, you have been working on communities in Kenya, like we were discussing on a last chat. Together with with designers, you look forward to the design challenges within these communities to cut out waste. I'm sure you have some examples of circular design cases that you were able to work on and develop as a team. Could you share a couple of them?
Well, I think at some point I'll just brush through a few use cases, like two, then I'll go to the most relevant. So for instance, in Kenya right now, we have a huge, okay, it's not unique to Kenya, because I know in South Africa and also in India, you have almost a similar problem, but mobility is a huge problem. And, car ownership is pretty low, but at the same time, we need to get to work we need to get to work on time. So just looking at the ecosystem here, we and communities, low income communities, we found out that they were working a lot, and we were looking for solutions to solve that. And also there was traffic congestion. But at the same time, car ownership is only 17% of the households in the city own cars. So we're looking at bicycles as a source to f- fast track that. And we don't manufacture bicycles in Kenya. So we either import new bicycles or used bicycles. So the used bicycles that we get are bicycles that we get from Europe and the Americas. Now these bicycles have to be received. Then they have really complicated parts, so they have to be maintained. So it's an entire ecosystem. At some point, with the bike share that we set up, we actually set it up using these used bicycles. So we are looking at an ecosystem where these bicycles can be incorporated in communities, because we get a lot of them. And the bicycle business model is usually parts. So how do we now set up an ecosystem or communities that can be able to maintain these bicycles? But for me, as a designer, the most interesting project that I worked on was with communities. So these are communities of waste aggregators, right? And they're also artists. So we did a collaboration with them. I have a brand, it's called Banzido. I'm a leather designer. And how I got into leather was during my campus years, I was interning a lot in, tanneries and companies that make leather products. And the amount of waste in these companies was just phenomenal. So I came up with a personal style that involves patchwork. So like joinery and patchwork. So my brand patches up a lot of leather offcuts to make products. And we make these leather products in a way that is modular. At some point, I have a use case of a product that was once a dress. It was used as a garment for an avant-garde show. Then it was a seat for a while. Then at its end of life, it's now, an art piece that sits on the wall. But it's not just an art piece. It also works to store things. Then for my pouch, I have these pouches that I make. So for my pouch brand, they are repairable, and I give you a guarantee that if it tears or it gets damaged before 3 years ends, you can bring it in. I repair it for you and you get it back. And I haven't gotten a lot of complaints. Mm-hmm. Yeah, at one point there is just the question of production and how and how I fit in this consumerism world where people want product to degenerate fast. But I'm proud of it sells itself. Just people consume the product because it's a lifestyle. They say, oh, okay, the belt you send me, I still have the belt. Now can I have the pouch? Can I have the bag? Now I'm at the process where I'm making bags. And the way I make these bags is I notice that needs change and the bags are evolving. So I have a bag brand that has a solid leather patch on one side, then the other side is denim. Now the denim side, you can change the shape, you can modify it, you can at some point a client brought back the bag and he wanted a bigger bag. So the denim side was the one that was shifted and made bigger. So just making sure that a product is modifiable for me has brought a lot of joy to my customers. And in terms of material sourcing, I am gravitating towards also green. So I'm looking at partnering with an artist who's a designer, a material designer, who's working on fish leather. So he gets a lot of fish leather in the western region of the country, where the Great Lakes region, Lake Victoria, They have Nile Perch where they do a lot of fillet, and the fish skins were being used as animal feed. But right now, they are converting them into fish leather. And it's all an organic process. They're using organic dyes. And these are precious material. And you don't want to kind of cut it. So that's where my process comes in handy, where the joinery. So we just get like these entire sheets, and with minimum wastage, we turn them into beautiful bags and beautiful products.
That's very interesting, Vikisa. Yes, fish leather, I mean, is not something which I have heard earlier. It's very, very interesting how you're converting that. Also, at some point of time, Vikisa, I think we did talk also about the flip flops that you were
Yeah.
doing.
Mhm.
Could you quickly share that case study? Because that case study is really interesting and would like to know. And then I'll come to Samit sir for next question.
Yeah, so there's a company, it's called Ocean Soul. So it works just close to it's part of the community here. And work at some point they make these beautiful artworks, sculptures out of flip-flops. So they collect flip-flops in the communities, and they work with the community a lot, waste pickers, the whole value value chain is involved. And they have they have they have employed artists who come in and shape them into these life size sculptures of animals. Just a month ago they made a car out of flip flops,
Yeah.
and for them they were looking at how they can inculcate this kind of knowledge and this kind of curiosity for recycling to young learners. So these are primary school and secondary school students, as there is a lot of demand for tours. So they were looking at a way to design an educational program
Mhm.
that can enhance the learning experience for these young learners. So they brought me in to design design a curriculum for them, and just sitting down and looking at the parts of the process and designing learning modules for them was one of the things that I found a lot of joy in.
Right. Thank you, Vikisa. We see a lot of kind of these changes that are being brought when you say converting the flip flops either to sculptures or maybe the tires in India, which are now being converted into flip flops, and vice versa. Multiple uses all around the world in several case studies, definitely. Sameer sir, similarly, we also have heard a lot of case studies in India when it comes to recycling of plastics. Uh, a lot of things, business models have come out. But I would like, being an expert in the plastics, I would like to know if you could list some successful business models in recycling of plastics, particularly taking care of the environmental impact. So, some examples, if you can enlist for us today, which have the minimum environmental impact.
Sure. It all began in 2018 when a company based in Hyderabad, known as Bani Nation, won the Dell People's Choice Award for Circular Economy Entrepreneur as part of the Circular Awards at the World Economic Forum. Their work has been great. They started working for Tata Motors in an automotive bumper recycling, and also partnered with L'Oreal, the French cosmetics giant, in shampoo bottle recycling, and put the company on a global sustainability map. This is a interesting and excellent case study, and they have been evolving and evolving in this. Another such a fine example is of a Mumbai based company startup and a startup called Lucro, and they have developed a process which they have titled as a Plast e-cycle that enables to one, recover plastic, second, recycle it into granule, and third, remake it into recyclable products that perhaps return to earth when their compostable solutions that they created. Scrap packaging is usually labeled as waste and is counted as one of the high contributors of plastic pollution. Through the plastic e-cycle process, Lucro closed the loop of recycling materials to make one product called as a Repro, that is a recyclable range of products. Second line of products is CoPro, that is made of compounds derived from bacterial fermentation of plant starches and sugars, and then converted into polymer to attain the reliability and the strength of plastics. They are not petroleum based and decompose without the hazardous toxic residue and fumes. All these products are designed with high durability for various applications and processing requirements. Another range of their products is the DuraPro range, which is tailor-made for auto components during which are not components, rather films that are uh, required during servicing or repairs. All these products are created from high durability fabric along with foam backing and unique anti-slip properties. So a lot of such startups are doing, and they have been successful and now popularizing and upscaling and expanding their capacities. So 2020 and beyond, we'll see a lot of such homegrown startups in India.
I think it is extremely important with the pandemic situation as well. I think when I see the kind of plastic waste that is now being generated, particularly the medical plastic waste, is really kind of an alarming situation, wherein we were talking about completely doing away with the single-use plastic. We are thrown into a situation where we have to use a lot of plastics on an everyday basis, and the quantities are humongous. So I think every country is right now kind of facing very challenging times on how to use this medical biomedical waste that is being generated on a daily basis, and plus the pandemic obviously has aggravated the situation. Keith, what interesting thing that I was reading about Ivasa is that you started very early, when I think even e-waste was not the talk of the town, and you have developed a very kind of a successful business model around it. So I would like you to talk a little bit about how did you make Ivasa as a successful business uh, at such an early stage?
Yeah, thanks. Pleasure. I just want to go back just to add on to what was being said before by Samir around plastic. So one of the real good examples worldwide is there was a company in Australia in 2014 thereabouts called Close the Loop, and their product, they specialized in, or they developed a technology specializing to recycle printer cartridges, ink toner bottles, and that absolutely nothing went to waste. So right now, and then they've since now opened up in the United States as well and become the market leader there too. So what they do is they collect all the old printer cartridges, all the toner ink bottles, and they recycle them. All the plastics get sent back to the OEMs, and they use those plastics to remake new printer cartridges. They take the metals that come out there, and they put them, and they started making roller ballpoint pens, and the ink powder that was left over in the cartridge, they would take that and use them as refills in pens. So it's 100% repurposed, reused, and recycled. So that's a real good example of that's the kind of things we can do across the full product spectrum, but it just needs some more work and development. And then coming back to your original question around EWaste. So one of the things about starting late, there's also advantages that you're able to sit back and look what's gone before, what people have done, where they've bumped their heads and made mistakes, and what to do going forward. So one of the key drivers when I decided to form EWaste way back in the early 2000s, and exactly that, e-waste was unheard of in South Africa. So we started introducing it. But what we said to ourselves when we formed EWaste, which is a not-for-profit company, we wanted to make sure that our focus is wider than what's currently in place. And Europe was the role model then. There's an association there called the We Forum, and the whole of Europe is now signatories to what's called the We Forum, and they define legislation for the whole of Europe. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Ireland, Germany, Scotland, Wales, whatever, you have to comply to the same legislation. And just by the way, last year I formed an association called Africa We Forum, and my vision is to have one standard legislation across the whole of Africa from Cape to Cairo, that all countries work on the same level because we have the same dynamics. But so that was the first thing. And the second thing why I wanted EWaste to be slightly different to what was happening in Europe as well is that currently, I think just over nearly 60% of the world is governed by some form of e-waste legislation. Yet despite that, if you look at the recovery rates and the recycle rates, they're still single digits, 10%. So you have to say to yourself, legislation is not necessarily the answer. Everybody, I think, believes there must be silver bullet that's going to solve the problem, because if you've got legislation, and currently, by example, if you've got 60% of the world covered by legislation, yet they've still got these low recycle recovery rates, then the problem lies elsewhere. And I think that's what we've got to say. If you have a legislation, then you must enforce it. Otherwise, don't have the legislation, becomes meaningless. So we said to ourselves, firstly, because it was something completely new for the country, for business, for consumers, is education and awareness. We needed to focus on that. And we did with a and bearing in mind that all this is done voluntary. There's no legislation that governs e-waste, so it was all done on a voluntary basis. We started raising education and awareness levels, both with the consumer, with e-waste collection days, exposed to them to what it was, to the business community as well, and also to schools. And right now, there's quite a lot of schools who run e-waste campaigns as well. So that was quite important for us. And that's an ongoing process. And why it's an ongoing process? Because technology keeps on changing, and therefore you need to keep yourself abreast of changing technologies. And then secondly, because of the dynamics, and that's one of the, originally, I must be honest, I'm one of these people that are happy to stand up and admit my mistakes. If I made a mistake, hopefully I don't make too many, but nevertheless, if I do, when BRICS was formed and South Africa was part of BRICS, I questioned that. I said, this can't be, something's not right here, but clearly I didn't know what the economists knew. And BRICS is very relevant, and it's I think it's going to become the powerhouse going forward. And particularly India and South Africa, we've got such a lot of commonalities. So that, if we have an even closer working relationship going forward, I think it'll be beneficial to a whole lot of people. But so the social compacts and the job creation focusing on youth, because in South Africa, if you take the segment 18 to 35 age categories, that's where we have sometimes up to 80% unemployment levels, irrespective of whether educated or uneducated. So if you don't deal with that, that's your future. You have to sort it out. So we want to focus around job creation, around that. Skills transfer, incubation hubs, technology development, beneficiation, and then ultimately extended producer responsibility. So those are the areas that we focus on. Towards the end of this year, in the next few weeks, we will launch the EWaste Academy, which will focus on more specifically on all those
Very nice, and I wish you all luck with your academy. I hope that you could actually train not just the Africans all around the world, because it's very, very important when we talk about e-waste. That also, when you mentioned about BRICS, I think you will be the favorite of our Prime Minister, because he really thinks BRICS is a kind of a very good community and could really help India to put forward the circular economy into. And if you must be reading the news, uh, in the BRICS conference this time, it was discussed that circular economy would be taken up as a kind of a major, important, most important subject by all the countries. So I think that really binds us together even more. I think it's time. I would like to thank you for answering all my questions. Very interesting and enlightening session. I would now like Susanna, if you could really open up the floor for
Yeah.
questions, please.
Thank you, Dr. Samir, Keith, Vikisa, and Shalini for your enriching thoughts on the topic. Now, I would like to open the floor for questions. So, if you have any questions, you can either use the raise your hand option or you can write it in the chat box and we will allow you to speak here. We already have a question in the Q&A box and it's from Nidhi Soni. And she's asking for any suggestions for extending the lifespan of the fashion garments already in the market and in the system. So Nidhi, I think I'll allow you to talk here and then you can, yes. Nidhi, if you want, you can unmute yourself
Yeah,
and
hello everybody. Thanks for the platform to ask my queries. So currently, I'm working on a brand wherein we try to sell. We're trying to promote the concept of second-hand buying and circular fashion. But we just want to know if there is any other way where we can try and extend the lifespan of a garment. So, for example, something that can be used for 3 years, 5 years, can it be extended? And with some changes, can something be done, or are there different ways before it reaches to the disposal or the landfill?
Uh, Nidhi, since we have the panel, which is not from the fashion industry, let me answer that question to you. I'll not ask this question anyone. Maybe Vikesa would like to add to my answer, but let me just quickly uh, uh, give my opinion on that. So, Nidhi, what happens is there are quite a few models, like you said, you're talking about extending the life cycle of the fashion products. Rental models are certainly working well in the industry. I was reading about Viga, and you would actually find that case study on ICC website also, wherein Viga is actually talking about the, so, the cloth, the garments of youngsters, and they are working on a kind of a rental model, wherein what they are basically into is these kids, because they grow so fast. Every 3 months you have to change the kind of entire products that you have. They put it on rent, and what happens is, instead of dumping those clothes after one use, they are actually use at least 3 to 4 cycles. So that is one way of extending the product life cycle. The other one is, if you talk about particularly Indian sector, where I see, and I've been actually very passionate myself about it, is again the renting model of the seniors. So when we talk about adults, uh, a fast fashion has become such a kind of integral part of our daily lives. It's a kind of a lifestyle statement today. But again, if someone was to discard the product, it could be reused. That is again another same rental model. I mean, it's a rental model again, but for the adults rather than the children. And the last but not least is the upcycling part. I think Vikisa definitely would like to answer this question, because we were discussing about it, how Africa is upcycling the clothes to extend their product. So, Vikisa, I think that part of your discussion will be very, very relevant here.
Oh, I'm on mute.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, it's actually, this is something that is increasingly being witnessed here where I sit. In Nairobi, for instance, we consume a lot of, they're called mutumba, the second-hand clothes. But you notice that the clothes that come in from the US are probably 2 or 3 sizes big, larger, and there's a huge problem when it comes to selling those clothes. So what happens is there's a new fashion wave that has arisen from that. So when these clothes come in, they are sorted. The ones that are ready for the market are actually sold off. Then the ones that are extra size there are tailors who are just dedicated, and there are like fashion designers there. They cook up new designs. You can find an Arizona University T-shirt, but it has a print on top of it of like Bob Marley or Che Guevara, and there, whatever the fashion on the surface is, it reflects that. So there are a lot of modifications that are happening to fit the market side that is happening to these used clothes. At the same time, we also have like African garments, like people who are based at EPZ, the export processing zones. They collect used clothes, then they shred them, and they get new yarn. And they use that yarn to make new clothes. And again, there are people who are making like beddings out of these used clothes. Because when the weather is cold, they make duvets. They stuff duvets. And there are people who are also making bags for school children. So there's a huge demand for clothing on the continent, but at the same time, there's a scene where waste or fabrics leaking into the environment, because at some point we also see the end of life of clothes. They're used as mop for cleaning the house, for mopping the house, and these microfibers leak into the environment. They get into the soil. The textiles is second only to plastics in terms of microfiber discharge to water bodies and the soil. So it's true that we need to be a bit keen when we're dealing with textiles, and especially when you look at fast fashion. And the problem comes in with fast fashion because it's almost a problem to find a use for it, because it has very high levels of polyester, and it's a bit tricky when you're thinking of what you want to use them for.
That's an very interesting fact that you've told, that textiles is next to plastic. I think this is again a kind of a learning for me today. I think we have another question here in the question and answer box. Uh, this is Jidnyasa, and the question is about biomimicry. So, is biomimicry creating value in circular economy? Samir sir, would you like to answer this question? You are on mute, sir.
I really do not know about biomimicry.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I would not be in a
Okay.
position to expand on this.
Keith, would you like to shed some light on this?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm absolutely not an expert, because this is, in my limited knowledge, this is something new that's come about, where we use technology to mimic things that actually happen in nature, and absolutely it does create value. I think in the circular economy, because I think if we look back over the history of our ancestors, nature and has always taught us a lot of lessons, and we can learn a lot from it. And I think that's why you find things like AI, artificial intelligence, becoming more and more integrated into our society and to the things that we do and the products that we use. And it's because of this of biomimicry, as I understand it.
Vikisa, any inputs on this?
Yeah, but yeah, I feel increasingly, like Kit said, increasingly technology and AI is pushing us towards biomimicry, and also just observing how nature works is also inspiring a lot of designs that are, are more and more moving in that level. I'd say there's, at some point there was this photovoltaic cell, or
Mm-hmm.
it, yeah, that was being designed. It's made to mimic a leaf, and
Is
it
it?
can
Okay.
be, yeah, it can be used as a fabric, that it's the like a tarpaulin on a truck, and it harvests energy. At the same time, we're also looking at, when you look at end of life for humans, and this is a case study that has happened in, I think, Israel, where they were looking at, they call like capsules, how
Okay.
how how the end of life for human happens. So instead of, us using coffins, we use these capsules, and things germinate off that. No, but yeah, it's a very interesting
Yeah,
topic
I
when you
think
look at it.
biomimicry is an upcoming topic where not many examples are there, not many case studies are available. In fact, I am also keen to know how these things work. Basically, what I have seen is there are several circular designs that have come up in biomimicry, and they're trying to follow. But what is the environmental impact, and what is the kind of uh, uh, is it does the entire life cycle, the life cycle assessments are yet to be done, and is the entire life cycle more environmental friendly? I think we still need an answer towards that. That I would, if I come across any such case study, I'll be happy to share with everyone. Thank you so much for that great question. Something for us all to learn. Then there is something from Shivam here. Shivam, can you ask your question, please?
So you can unmute yourself and ask your question now.
Okay, Susanna, we can.
I'll
Yeah,
I'll actually read it out.
sure.
Given petrochemicals generated as an output in the oil and gas industry are the most commonly used raw materials for a plastic industry, how do you think a circular plastics economy affects the oil and gas industry?
Again, a question, I think. Yeah, Keith, please.
Yeah, so if I can just come in. So in a previous life, I spent 15 years in the petrochemical industry with Caltex Oil here in South Africa. And I think as everybody or most people know, we've grown up with fossil fuels as being the backbone of our sources of energy and used for transport and agriculture and so forth. Um, and over time, we now beginning to understand and do understand the effect, the negative effect that it does have on the economy. Sorry, on the environment. And plastics, as one of the byproducts, is no different to any other industry that has to rethink the way things that it's done. As we've moved from linear, make something, use something, throw it away, to circular now, we want to keep it in life for a lot much longer. And I think even in plastic, so we've already seen the enhancements taking place. If you just think of all the old ICT equipment and the CRT monitors, the cathode ray tube monitors and TVs that we had, they had in those plastics they had a lot of chemicals in there, which was flame retardants, which was, if they were burnt, they exhausted highly toxic fumes into the environment. So you find that flame retardant materials are virtually non-existent now. So the plastics industry has adapted, or the petrochemicals industry has adapted in terms of the products that it produces. And it's an ongoing process. Coming back to the earlier question about biomimicry, that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that the products that we make, whether it's fossil fueled or it's new fueled or new energy sources, because even renewables have their challenges that they have on, and the effects that they come with the economy. To extract gas, for example, is hugely detrimental to the economy. Shale and mining and all the rest of exactly the same thing. So we have to, as owners of the planet, and we want to leave something for the future generation, we all need to take ownership and continue to look at ways and means to make this happen. And plastics and the petrochemical industry is no different to any other.
I
Thank
think
you,
that
Kit.
amply answers his question. Yes, Susanna.
I don't think there are more questions coming up, and in lieu of time, we will call it a day here. So, thank you so much to all of you for your valuable presence, and we really appreciate you taking time to participate in the event. And we look forward to see you all in our next session, which is on 21st November, on the topic management and operations of plastic waste for material recovery. And you can visit our website and register for the same. It's been a pleasure being with all of you today. I wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Keith, Vikisa, Samir. It was really wonderful hearing you out. Keith, it was really wonderful knowing Ivasa and the Impact Academy that you're coming up with. I would really like to know more about it, definitely. And let me know if I am of any kind of use, if I can contribute anywhere, I would be happy to contribute.
Thank you very much, Shalene, and to the other, to Rakisa and to Samir, to Susanna. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure from our side too. And I'm certain we'll cross paths. We're certainly going to talk more going forward. Thanks very much, and goodbye from a rainy South Africa.
Is it? Is it? Okay. India is getting colder day by day. I don't know whether we are nervous about it or happy because this winter doesn't bring kind of cheer to us because the virus is increasing and the numbers are surging. So, kind of uh, very, very kind of a confusing situation for us here in India. Plus, the bad news coming from, I think, France is not also very encouraging. We really hope peace and harmony for the entire world. This is only that I could actually say for 2020. I always made a remark saying that I look forward to 2021, but after reading a couple of economic reports, which says that the real economic crisis is going to happen in 2021, particularly the Q2. So, I am not very sure whether I'm looking forward to 2021 or is it uh, really scared of even saying that I'm looking forward. Neither want to say, kind of say, want to say goodbye to 2020. Anyway, I think we all are in the similar situation. Thank you so much once again, Vikisa. It was wonderful hearing you. And I think I wish you luck with your circular designs, which is actually a very upcoming kind of a area domain. And India and Africa doesn't stand apart. I think we have a lot of things in common. So these things I think really do matter to us. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Samir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Bye bye.
Susanna, a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.